Today, I'm joined by someone whose work really caught my attention at a time when I needed it, Paul Dicker. Paul has an MA in applied psychology. He's a positive psychology coach and the founder of his own professional development company. But what stands out to me is that in more recent years, his focus has shifted to helping people live with more clarity, confidence, and purpose. And honestly, Paul, I feel like I'm speaking to you at exactly the right moment in my life. So thank you for being here with me today.
Well, thank you, Emma, for giving me the opportunity. It's a real pleasure to be on your podcast. And yeah, I welcome this opportunity to chat to you.
Fabulous. I love it. So I always think that our work grows out of who we are. So before we dive into psychology side,
Mm.
can you take us back a little bit to what experiences or moments shaped you into the person that you are today?
Sure, absolutely, Emma. Well, first thing to say is despite this Essex accent, I've lived over in Ireland for 25 years, and we'll probably come on to the reason for that.
Yeah.
But I originally was born in Chelmsford in Essex. And my early life, Emma, was very sort of conventional. I had a mother and father both working, an older brother, a sort of middle class upbringing, comfortable. I didn't really want for anything.
Mhm.
Didn't realize at the time how lucky I was. It's funny when you're that young, you kind of take things for granted. You know, early schooling and going into my teens, I was quite an academic. I kind of set, as I reflect, quite high standards for myself academically. So I kind of found myself in the top streams at school and put some expectations on myself there that shaped me a little bit. But anyway, happy in my life. Got into theatre at a young age, at the age of 13, joined a theatre group. And that shaped a lot of my early adolescence and built confidence, I think, you know, being on stage, performing, and a lovely group of friends. So, yeah, as I say, it was a pretty perfect childhood and early adolescence. So nothing really had gone awry at that stage.
So you had a happy childhood, teenage life, and then
Yeah.
something started to change for you as you got a little bit older.
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. I think, you know, out of the blue, my parents had been married for 25 years and to all intents and purposes, happily married. But my father left when I was 18, the family home. He met somebody else. So that was a huge jolt. I thought this isn't meant to be happening. You know, what happens to the perfect life? So, and I think at the time, as I reflect on that, I became quite sort of angry about this shouldn't be happening, a little bit less conventional. I am a conventional kind of person. I abide by rules. I'm not a rule breaker. That's kind of a theme of my life. But at that stage, I think I was a little less predictable, let people down a little bit, particularly in things like rehearsing for shows. There'd be a couple of rehearsals I wouldn't show up for example. So there were uncharacteristic things coming through that I can now see why they were there. But at the time, I didn't really understand it. But I mean, I was fortunate. I had good friends around me. I was in a relationship at a fairly young age, and she was very supportive. But nevertheless, it was a jolt, Emma. And I think it was the first lesson of life that, you know, things can come out of the blue that you're not prepared for. And I
Yeah.
hadn't really recognized how lucky I'd been up until then, you
Mhm.
know, with everything that I had in my life.
And did you feel at the time, Paul, I mean, looking back now, do you think as a young person in some way you blamed yourself for their breakup or how did that affect
Yeah,
you, do you think?
it's funny actually. I mean, I think you do, and I think
Mm.
I did a little bit myself and my brother. I mean, everything was given to us. We were very well supported by both my parents. You know, they're very supportive of my theatre, and probably my mother indulged us, and her attention was on us, her two boys.
Mm,
And maybe as I look back, I don't know. I don't know really what the reasons were for Dad leaving. But,
mm,
you do definitely, Emma, experience some of that guilt. I
yeah,
mean, you know, and question things. But
yeah.
even then, at the age of 18, I probably didn't do as much questioning at the time. I just felt this kind of, this isn't what should be happening. You know, nobody else's life's like this. You know, you start comparing yourself. Of course, there were other lives like that, but not in my circle. Yeah, that was the first kind of implosion, if you like, you know.
Yeah, and so from there then in your early 20s, where did life take you next?
Yeah. Well, you see, I'd plans to go to university, and because of that, my dad leaving just after my A levels, I wanted to stay with mum and be there for her, and with my brother. So I kind of didn't go to university. I just leapt into working, and I just thought, what will I become? I know I'll go for banking,
Mm,
you know, and it hadn't come from any particular passion. In fact, maths and that kind of thing was one of my weakest subjects at school, or one that I didn't particularly enjoy. So I found myself in banking, Emma, at the age of 18, working in the city of London, getting up at 6 in the morning and back at 7 o'clock at night, tubes, trains, and all of that good stuff. I
mm,
remember my first day, Emma, looking at the clock at 2 o'clock on my first day in the bank, thinking, I'm not going to stick this for much more than a week or two.
mm,
And I ended up 17 years in banking. So no, it wasn't all bad. And there's some good things I can talk to you about, but it wasn't a chosen career per se. But I kind of worked in the bank, and it was good. Look, I was 18. I was in London. I was with a lot of young people. We had great times, and
mm,
that got me through that. My mum met somebody else who became my stepfather, and he was a good guy, a good man, and so I could see my mum's happiness improving. So yeah, from sort of 18 to 21, those years were really spent working in the bank, working my way up.
mm,
And then I suppose the next piece of sort of implosion was getting a knock at the door one night, August the 2nd, 1987. And it was the police saying that my father had passed away. He'd had a massive heart attack on a badminton court. He was a fit man. He was only 50, Emma.
wow.
So, the that was a real shock. It was actually 5 years, 5 sort of days before my 21st birthday. And yeah, that was obviously a real shock. And I suppose you talk about what feelings you go for. I think the feelings I went there was a bit of guilt, because I thought, well, when did I last speak to Dad, and what was that conversation about? Because he wasn't in the household.
Mm,
He was living in Southend. I saw him occasionally, but obviously not as regularly.
mm,
And there was something nagging me that I kept saying to myself, I think our last conversation was me with recrimination about the fact he'd left us. That's
yeah.
what, and I still don't know to this day whether that was the last conversation. But
Mhm,
you kind of, I obsessed about that. I obsessed
mhm,
about that.
mm,
But what got me through was wonderful friends around me. Again, a relationship at the time. And so I would, look back and being fortunate that I wasn't on my own.
mm,
But it's definitely those events
mm,
from sort of 18 to 21 have formed a lot of my core character, Emma,
yeah.
you know, as I
Thank
look back.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Paul. And it's
All
just,
Emma.
I'm sure there's things we'll come to, but you, even as a man, losing your father and,
Mm, mm,
realizing then probably later as an adult just how
yeah.
much you were shaped by the
Yeah.
relationship with him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true, Emma, actually. That my dad was great in terms of he was quite disciplined. He was an upholder of sort of things that he promised to himself. And I think that stayed with me.
Mm,
In terms of my life and my career and my work, I'm quite good at making myself a promise and sticking to it. And I think that comes from my dad.
mm,
So it's lovely to be able to look back now with the passage of
yeah.
time. And I look back with fondness, my mum and my dad and all the things they did for me. At the time, I guess, 18 to 21, went off the rails a little bit. Now, for me, Emma, going off the rails is probably nothing like most people, because I am so conventional. But I definitely let a few people down, and it affected my relationship at the time, all that stuff.
Wow.
Um,
So, in terms of your work, you were in banking, which
yes.
I'm sure there's lots of there that you observed and learned, but you moved then from one career to another. Like, what was happening in your life at the time for you to decide on making that change?
Yeah, I suppose the career change came actually a lot later, but I suppose it was a gradual thing, because actually I remember, Emma, even in my 20s, going into a shop to buy a book on banking, and I saw this book called The Power of Positive Thinking.
I know it, yeah.
Do you know it? By a
Yeah,
guy called
yeah.
Norman Vincent Peale. It's funny looking back on it. I probably wouldn't subscribe to all of it now, but it
Yeah.
was a launch into that world, and I was fascinated. All through my 20s, Emma, I started reading and working on myself, because I'd been through this stuff
Mm,
and I'd learned from it. But I was still in banking up until my mid 30s, even when I came over to Ireland. But it was about career, it was about progress. I was working my way up the ladder in the bank. I became a bank manager. I was working in the city. So I started leading people. So
Mm.
some of the stuff that I was learning was really helpful for that. Leading people, leading teams. And in those days, the word coach didn't really feature, but I guess I was coaching before it was
Mm.
known as a thing. So I kind of started getting a taste. And I realized more and more as I was going through my 20s that I really didn't want to stay in banking. It gave me a lot of good things. I mean, clearly from a financial point of view, it helped, right? When I
Yeah.
was younger, I managed to get a place. My values at that time were kind of around financial, you know, moving up, progressing career.
Mm.
But then they started to change. And I think I'll talk to you probably at some point here that values are very important to me when it came to my career choices. But at the time, Emma, up until my early 30s, up until I sort of moved to Ireland, I was still in banking with Lloyds. I was with Lloyds Bank. It was retail
Mm.
banking, sales targets and all that
Yeah.
stuff. It was quite stressful, but
Mm.
it served its purpose
Yeah.
for a while, shall I say.
And that's the beauty, isn't it? Looking back at sometimes we realize we were maybe not in the right career, but it
Yeah.
has given us some foundation for where we then go next.
I think you're absolutely right, Emma, because I think we can disregard things and we say that was a bad choice and they're
Mm.
all just choices we made at the time. And everything in our life, it teaches us something. And I think through banking, I learned about planning. I learned about focusing on what you can control. I learned about, the fact that we have more agency, than perhaps we give ourselves credit for. I had some good bosses as well,
Yeah.
and some really good leaders. And one of the, do you know, Emma, one story I want to quickly tell you was I was in a comfort zone in the bank. And this is my first foray into comfort zones, which is a big thing in my world as a coach,
Mm.
getting people out of their comfort zones. My boss, Steve, at the time, I was in business banking and I've been in it for 4 years. And he said to me, Paul, I noticed you didn't put your name in the hat for the new branch manager position. I was surprised. And I said, well, Steve, I'm enjoying what I'm doing here. I love what I'm doing. I don't think I've learned everything that I need to blah de blah. And I
Mm.
always remember he kind of said, well, I'll leave it with you, but it sounds like you might be in a comfort zone. So
Mm.
he kind of pointed that out and he was right. So after he said that, he kind of niggled me a little bit. I went for the job. I got the job of the branch manager. I
Mm.
was hugely out of my comfort zone. I hated it for the first 6 months, but I learned so much. So I think from that, Emma, it was the journey outside of the comfort zone that I learned about that's how you build confidence. That's how you sort of build self-esteem. So I was definitely too long in a comfort zone. It's something that we may talk about, but it's something
Yeah.
that I work with a lot with people that I'm working with.
Yeah. I definitely realized you'd mentioned that a lot in your work, and I'm on the same page with you, Paul. I definitely think getting out your comfort zone is a huge, huge thing for
Yeah.
gaining confidence.
Yeah. No, it
So just
is.
before we go deeper into the work
Yeah.
you're doing now, so you're
Yeah.
you're a positive psychology coach.
Yeah.
Can we start with something simple? I was thinking for most people, they may not know what is positive psychology.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I didn't know what coaching was, first of all. I mean, the reason I became a coach and, very briefly, why did I end up in Ireland before with the
Yeah.
banking? This whole into positive psychology and coaching was prompted really by I don't think I'd be here if I stayed in the UK. So, I'll come back to it. I'll tell you how I met my wife in a minute. But anyway, or do you
I
want to
want
know
to hear
now?
that now. I think that's
You want to hear that now?
interesting.
Okay, you want that?
I
Let's go
think,
for it.
yeah, like
How
what
long we
brought
got,
you to
Emma?
Ireland? I mean, love. I mean, what better thing, to move to Ireland for?
Well, I tell you, Emma, it was one of those sliding doors moments, right? I was out in London in my early 30s. This is when I was in Lloyd's. Night out on a Friday night. I walked across Leicester Square to get a tube and I bumped into an old pal of mine who I hadn't seen in about 5 years, Andy. And we had a chat. And I said, how are you, Andy? He said, I'm getting married in a month or two. And he said, I've got my stag do in Dublin next week. And he said, do you want to come? Now, I'm not very spontaneous, but for that, I actually said, why not? So that found me over in Dublin in 1998 in a certain nightclub in Harcourt Street where
Coppers?
it wasn't Coppers. Everybody says Coppers, Emma. It was nearby. I think it was next door. It was called the Vatican. It was called the Vatican. But anyway, eyes met across the crowded dance floor. I met my now wife, Kira. So,
Oh,
we did the whole jetting backwards and forwards from the UK to Ireland for a few years. Like yourself, Emma, Kira's a teacher or was a
okay.
teacher in the
Yeah.
primary sector, primary school teacher at the time. And so she came over and lived in the UK. She taught in a desh school, you call it here,
Mm,
um, in Chelmsford. And she did that for a year. And then we decided Celtic Tiger,
mm,
let's go back to Ireland. So I moved lock, stock, and barrel, packed up all my possessions in my Ford Escort, including my black and white cat,
lovely.
traveled to Holyhead, got the ferry across, and that was it. So very much, that was kind of 2001. So a big change, changed everything in 2001. Got
Mm,
married, changed career, got a job with Bank of Ireland. And I suppose, just as a little bit of a byline, I suppose one thing that drew me to positive psychology was my need for it. Because
mhm,
one thing I've not mentioned, Emma, which was kind of a bit of another implosion, was shortly after Kira and I got married, my mum passed away.
mm,
Now, she'd been sick before, Emma. She'd had breast cancer and it'd been in remission, but it came back, and within 6 weeks of her diagnosis, then she passed away. So in the October 2001, we got married in the August. So I think, for poor Kira, having her husband going through grief, and she was extremely supportive, of course, she was wonderful, but it wasn't a married first year of marriage
mm,
that we'd envisaged. And I was, oh geez, I went through a really bad time there. I think about the things that I've learned that I can help other people with. I became the flip side of who I am. I was cold, I was aloof, and I was kind of working Bank of Ireland with sales targets. Now, Bank of Ireland was a great employer, and I've got a lot to thank them for, but it was quite pressurized, Emma.
mm,
So at the time, new career, married, new country, didn't really know anybody, targets. And I remember hitting rock bottom. I was standing in the doorway in Grafton Street, drenched through, caught in a shower, a bit like a day like today, and hadn't hit my targets. I was sheltering. I thought, oh my God, I thought this is rock bottom. But it was kind of like one of those spiritual moments that I thought something was telling me, Paul, you've now hit rock bottom.
mm,
So the only way is up. And there was something in that that was kind of hopeful almost. So, it's that kind of formed my graw, as you say over here, don't you, in Ireland, for
your graw.
moving
Yeah.
the graw. Have I pronounced that correct?
Do you mean like your love of something?
My love of.
Yeah, your graw. Yeah.
And Emma, my wife had been saying to me, Paul, you need to go and speak to somebody. And I was like the stoic man. I don't need to speak to anybody,
Mm,
that sort of thing. When, but I did eventually go for counselling, grief counselling. Met a lovely guy, Brian, who I'm still friends with, and having a conversation. It's helped so much. And every male that I meet, I tell them, speak
mm,
to each other. This
yeah.
is something I'm really passionate about, and I actually want to take further in my work to
Oh,
get people to talk to each other. It doesn't happen enough, Emma. Not, I
mm,
don't want to be too stereotypical, but I think
mm.
for males, it's a difficult thing talking it through.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen that myself in
Have you?
courses I've done, and even just recently, I'm working with Pat Divley in the breath work, and there's lots of men in that group, and it's just
Is
been
there?
so beautiful to witness men being able to be vulnerable for maybe the first time in their lives. It's
Definitely.
just been really
Yeah.
powerful stuff. And I think women really appreciate men who are able to express themselves, and I think. Look, it's a whole other area, but I'm glad there are men out there supporting that. I think it's
Yeah.
needed in
No.
Ireland in particular, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. It's definitely a passion of mine now as I think about the next
Mm,
chapter for me, to help and support people, because I've seen people and families being broken by men not talking about stuff and in tragic circumstances that could have been
mm,
prevented.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Emma, I'll come back to your question. I went on a diversion then, but
Yeah, no, it's fine. We were talking about what
positive
positive
psychology.
psychology actually is.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very good question. One thing it's not, which is important to say, it's not toxic positivity, which is the kind of stuff, Emma. Everything's
Mm,
going to be great. It's all wonderful. Just say look in the mirror, tell yourself you're great, and it'll be fine.
mm,
It's rooted in research. It's rooted in research, and I think it basically encompasses the good and the bad. It accepts that things happen, and I've described a few things for that purpose, really, to position positive psychology. Things happen to all of us in our life. So it's not negating that, but it's saying, look, we still have a choice. We can still lean into positivity and trying to find something that we can take away from an event that's going to help us and support us. And the one big thing that I learned in my master's in positive psychology early on was that it's a skill. We can learn it, and that our brains are far more malleable than we give them credit for. We used to think they were quite fixed, but they've done all these scans on brains. They've seen the connections that the neurons that can connect, that actually can rewire our brains the more we practice the skills of positivity. So I think that's really encouraging. And we're all on a spectrum of positivity. We all have days. I have days when I'm down in the dumps. Of course I do. You know, I think my challenge for me, Emma, is to take the mask off a bit more when I do have those days. Because I think I'm a little bit, sometimes with the theatre, a bit of a performance, and I have to watch that I don't overperform because I want to connect with people.
Yeah.
I want to be honest about that struggle. But I do go down to the negative end. We all do. But the most important thing is we don't beat ourselves up for that. I think we're really harsh on ourselves.
Yeah.
So positive psychology, in a long-winded way, is accessible to everybody. I chose to study it because of these events and because of my sort of love of self-development. And you know what, Emma? COVID hit. So my business fell off a cliff because all my work is in-person workshops and training courses for leadership mainly. And of course, it all fell off a cliff. So I had time on my hands. So I actually applied for the UCC Masters in Positive Psychology and Coaching. First year was online. Now, fortunately, my business started going online as well, as everybody did, Zoom calls and everything. I guess you were teaching online, Emma, were you, during those days?
Yeah, I was actually living in Bermuda at the time, and it sounds great.
It does sound wonderful.
The honest thing was it was extremely lonely because I was there, you know, I have friends and stuff like that. I wasn't a complete loner, but I was living on my own and we weren't allowed to see people at certain times and whatever.
Wow.
But also the island was on lockdown, so you couldn't leave or
Oh my God.
anyone could come in. So that felt really lonely because
Cool.
some people were having a great time during COVID.
I know. They had their best life. So you couldn't travel back to Ireland for a while then?
No, couldn't leave the country and people couldn't come in either for a certain period of time. But in fairness, job-wise, it was actually a dream because I was very lucky. My students were so lovely and they're very,
Right,
for
Emma.
teenagers actually did work. I would do like on a Friday, I'd say, okay, now you're going to spend this lesson reading. Off you go now to the beach and read. And they'd go off and I'd go off to the beach.
How wonderful.
So there were some handy little moments in there, I'd have to say.
Well, I don't blame you for taking full advantage when you're in Bermuda. I mean, but obviously for you as well, it sounds like it was a struggle from that point of view of loneliness. I mean, you know, I think for me with COVID, it just gave me that space to be able to do a bit more study. And it did give me 2 years. And now the second year, Emma, I was traveling backwards and forwards to court, which is fabulous. And I had a lovely supervisor with my thesis. And I did my thesis on positive personal transformation. Yeah, so I interviewed 12 people who had been through some sort of life change that had worked out positively. So I had a variety of interviews with people who'd gone through addiction, overcome addiction, bereavement, relationship breakdown, serious illness, all that stuff, and how they journeyed through that to turn their lives around. So it's very interesting. So yeah, it was really powerful. And I suppose a lot of people, you talk about who inspired you. I get inspired by other people and their stories, and that was a real inspirational time for me. So I don't know if that's answered your question about positive psychology.
No, you know what, Paul? This is why I wanted to speak to you. You're a fascinating man. I'm telling you, you really are.
I'm a bit of a rambler. Sorry about
No, don't be. Everything you're saying is interesting, so I love it. So just when I was looking through your work and picking out a few bits and pieces, in fairness, you've mentioned a few already, which I love. You hit on toxic positivity, which I definitely think can be tricky one nowadays because a lot of people are like, yeah, right, like, I just say in the mirror that everything's gonna be okay, like, I don't think so. Um, One thing that I actually really loved and what really stuck with me was you said something about resistance being the mind trying to override reality,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
acceptance can completely change our
yeah,
experience of the same moment, and I just
yeah.
love that. Would you mind talking to me a little bit
No,
more about that?
no, not at all. I think we do resist. I mean, everything I talk about, whether it be on social media or in my classrooms, are probably things I've experienced. And I want to say from the starting point, Emma, that the things that I talk about and train and coach around is to say and to acknowledge that we're all doing our best. We're all doing our best. And I think that's the first thing. Sometimes we resist, even feeling that we're not accomplished, that we're not doing our best. And I think just leaning into that is helpful. I definitely don't have it all sussed. I break some of the rules that I talk about, but then I realize why I'm down the negative end of the spectrum because I've kind of broken one of my rules. We're none of us perfect. And, I'm far from it. I think with the resistance piece there, yeah, I think when we try and resist or we bury our heads in the sand, that's quite natural and normal. Who would want to face up to things that are problematic? It makes sense. I mean, our brain tries to protect us. So it's trying to do its best, but it's not always helpful. So I think acceptance is critical. And when we talk about behavioral change, which isn't easy, if it were easy, I wouldn't be in a job, It's not something we lean into because it requires discomfort. It requires, leaning into that resistance. It requires discomfort, stepping out of comfort zone, and we talked about. Behavioral change, I talk about the 3 A's of it. The first one is awareness. The first one is to become aware of what is it that you're resisting or what is it that you want to change. Now, Emma, I think in our world today, we don't get enough time to reflect and pause. I know you're a big believer in this.
Yeah.
The stuff that you do is wonderful. It gives people a chance to pause, doesn't it, with your breath work and the
Yeah.
workshops. And I was reading something recently, Emma, that we used to stand at bus stops or in queues at the supermarket and we'd think, what do we do now? We go on our phone and we scroll. So we're not reflecting. So giving space, and I know you do in your wonderful work, giving people space to reflect and take that time to reflect, that's awareness, starting to become aware of things that are not working so well, aware of things that are. So it's the first A. The second A is acceptance. So that's kind of not resisting and it's accepting I need to do something about this. That can be the hardest bit. I think we keep ourselves busy sometimes because we don't really want to look at what's going on. So it's natural to keep ourselves busy. So acceptance is important. And then the third A is action. And for me, the actions in my coaching are about small, imperfect steps. No one's got it all figured out. Just think about the next step that's going to help you just a little bit. And I say to people I coach, what's the one thing that's going to make you feel just a little bit better by the time you put your head down tonight? Maybe it's calling somebody, making a list. Maybe it's having that conversation you've been avoiding. I think one of the truths, actually, Emma, that around conversations, which I think are critical to change, is there's a book called Fierce Conversations. It's by a lady called Susan Scott. And she says we all have a conversation in us that we haven't had yet, but that we really need to have. And sometimes that conversation is with ourselves, sometimes it's with a partner. But I think that's all leaning into and kind of stepping away from the resistance, just acceptance. So awareness, acceptance, and action are key when it comes to changing our behaviors.
I love that. That's just an easy way to follow as well. That's really, really clear. Thank you, Paul. You've got some lovely alliteration in your work. I saw another one that you had spoken about, which was helped, heard, or
Yeah.
hugged.
Oh yeah. I
Love
only
that.
heard of that one recently. Helped, heard, or hugged. You see, when you're in training and coaching, you get loads of these.
Yeah.
But helped, heard, or hugged. I only read about this a few months ago when I put that post up.
Yeah.
And it's good. I think listening, one of the key things for me that I've tried to develop is the skill of listening. I'm a natural extrovert, so it doesn't come easily. Although I say I become more introvert as I've got older. I like my introvert time. But
Mm.
listening is something I've had to work on. And as a coach, obviously I need to do it. So when someone's talking to us, that helped, heard, or hugged is important. And it works well, particularly even, with Kira, for example. She'll come home and she might mention that she's had a difficult day or whatever, and I try and go into problem solving mode. But I've learned she doesn't always need me to solve her problems. No. So now I think, is it helped, is it heard, or is it hugged? So I can say to Kira, do you want to be helped, heard, or hugged? So helped, do you need me to help you solve a problem? Often she doesn't. Heard, just listen to. Or do you just need a good old fashioned bit of oxytocin, a bit of the old hug, makes things
Mm.
better. So I think it can work really well. And I keep reminding myself of that one, Emma, because I can go into
Mm.
problem solving a fair bit, so
I
it
think
just
it's
helps us.
very important for women anyway, for sure. And it's lovely as a man that you're acknowledging that,
I'm no way
being able
perfect,
to hold.
Emma. Don't worry. I'm not, I tell you, I'm not perfect at it. So some of the stuff that I preach, I need to practice more and more. But
It's
yeah,
so powerful though. And, as you said earlier about the research-based part of positive psychology,
yeah.
you talked about that before. And can I ask you, like, are there ways to train your mind, for example, to be more content or
Okay.
happier? Like, are there two or
Yes.
three things that you feel actually work?
Okay. I think that's a great question. Because I think
Mm,
today, in today's world, we know all the studies show that we're not as happy as we used to be, and yet we have everything around
mm,
us. I know the world events are definitely more stark than perhaps they were a number of years ago. But just in terms of comforts and things, I think most of us are blessed with a roof over our head, food in our bellies, and all that kind of thing. But we're not happy. I think some of it comes down to expectations. I think expectations have risen about the kind of life that we should be aspiring to because we look on social media, you know, and I think, and I talk to people who are forming relationships now, and these days it's not like me back in the nightclub. They're all swiping right and left and trying to find the right person, and do you know,
mm,
and I think the expectations are we're going to get perfect, and when we don't get perfect, we're disappointed because nothing's perfect. It's messy. So I think lowering our expectations is important. Not to say that we don't have standards, because that's
mm,
different. I think it's important that we, particularly relationship, we meet somebody perhaps shares our values, but they're going to bring stuff that we don't particularly like, and we're going to bring stuff that they don't like. That's okay. So I think it's not about not having goals, but it is just recognizing that it's messy. So when it goes messy in your life, don't forget you just see people's highlight reels on social media.
mm.
And I know you know this, Emma, don't you? It's so
Yeah.
be careful because comparing leads to despairing. We look at other people's lives, we're not happy because we think we should be where they are. They've got the house, they've got the kids, and we get down on ourselves. It's wholly natural. So I think I say to people, stay in your own lane, compare your life with your own life. Are you making the progress you want? And if you're not, don't beat yourself up. Just say, well, it didn't go so great this week. What did I learn? So I think from a happiness point of view, and I hope I've answered your question, Emma, I think one of the things
Yeah.
is I think we over expect. We expect to be happy all the time, but no one's life's like that. So I think that's the
Mm,
first piece. And I think the other piece is gratitude. One of the studies I did when I did the masters was about gratitude. And we hear about it a lot. And for some people, it can be a bit of one of those toxic words, really, because people say, "Oh God, he's telling me to be grateful for this and that," and I get it, I get it. And I was a bit cynical about gratitude, but I did a study on it myself. I did 30 days of gratitude practice, and what it taught me was to look out for the little things in life that you kind of take for granted, that they're there if you have that lens to notice them. And that can be the things that the narrow misses. Like a couple of days ago, I was driving on the M50, someone pulled out in front of me. It was a narrow miss. That I offered it up as a gratitude to say, I could have gone,
mm,
rather than sort of getting irate with the person, I was kind of there saying a gratitude prayer that was
mm.
a near miss that could have gone wrong. So I think notice the small stuff, the happiness in your life already. Of course, I'm a great believer in having goals. I think we need goals because that gives us hope for a better future, but don't sacrifice them. I did this a little bit, Emma. Don't sacrifice them for the now, the journey. So I think gratitude and expectations, those two things are, I think, critical pieces. Does that answer your question, Emma?
That absolutely does. I love that. And while you were speaking there, I just was reminded of, I'm sure you know Dr. Wayne Dyer's
Yeah.
work.
Wayne Dyer.
Absolutely love him. I
Yes.
mean, I listen to his work in the mornings really gets me on a
Is it, Emma?
positive mindset. And he said if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at
Yeah.
change. And I always try to think about that.
But yeah, I mean, you change the way you look at things. It's I think the lens that we look at, through life, we're sold this perfect life that isn't reality, and
Mm,
people don't feel they're measuring up to other
yeah,
people, and that comparison bit is hugely problematic. I mean, I'm a
yeah,
big fan of putting the phones away. I love my
yeah,
phone, but I think they're hugely problematic. They don't give us a chance.
yeah. I understand when you were talking about that earlier about being at a bus stop and, even when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, you just had to be bored.
Yeah.
And as I work with teenagers now, it's really sad to see that, as you said, you need to be able to sit there in your own thoughts.
Mm,
It's really healthy, actually.
it
It's
is.
important, but we're
Yeah.
being that now because of technology, actually. We're being denied
That's a
the
great word. We
ability
are
to.
being denied that. It's a great phrase, Emma. We are. We're being
Mhm.
denied that luxury. And being bored. I love what
Yeah.
you just said there, because we're not bored enough
Mm.
these days. We're always distracted. We need to be bored sometimes. Why?
Yeah. It's almost a dirty word,
It's just a dirty
you know
word.
what I mean?
And we feel we're missing out. So be bored, be blessed and being bored. I mean, it gives you a chance just to reflect on your emotions. So I've written that down there, being bored. I think I might do a little. I think the other thing to say to people is, I read this line during the week. It says, "No one cares about your life as much as you do." Now, when I
Mhm.
first read that, I thought that's a bit harsh, but it gives us great freedom because no one is looking at us. There's something I learned in positive psychology, Emma, that I didn't mention, which is called the spotlight effect. We think
Mm.
everybody's looking at us all the time. They're not. They're thinking we're looking at them all the time. So go and do your beautiful thing. They're not worried. Now, within reason, obviously, we've got to be people, but just give it up that people aren't really that worried about you as much as you think
Yeah.
they are. I think that's freeing. I love that. I have to watch that myself because the stage in the theatre, you literally have a spotlight on you. I have to
Mhm.
watch that doesn't carry over, and that just be happy, and it's messy, but you're making progress, and don't judge yourself, Lee.
Thank you for that. I love that advice. And like a big part of your work is helping people become more effective and confident
Yes.
in their personal and professional lives. And I'll be honest, I can be confident in some situations, but I can lose confidence in myself very quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious on your take. Are some people just naturally confident and others not?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's always that nature nurture debate. I
Mm,
think, look, we don't all get the same breaks in life from a young age, and
mm,
those formative years are so important. I mean, I'm not an expert in that from a psychology point of
mm,
view, but I just know that those formative years, and I think not everybody gets the great starting life that I had, to be
mm,
honest with you, in my early years. So I'm very grateful for that. I think some of that confidence is built, very young, isn't it? We don't all
mm,
get the same starting point, but we can all nurture some confidence. And confidence is something that it's the number one thing people ask me. I want to be more confident when I present, for example. I want to be more confident when I have a
mm,
conversation. I want to put my hand up at a meeting. I think the number one message that I say to them is, I can do the training, I can give a presentation skills course, but you've actually got to go and do presenting to actually experience that anxiety a little bit, because that's where the growth happens. Before everybody
mm,
floods with asking me for presentation skills courses, I don't do those now, by the way, but I used to. I used to. But do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing
mm,
that in the anxiety is the growth. I know it sounds a bit corny, but it's true. It's actually, we don't become confident in the comfort zone. So, and actually, the comfort zone is pesky because it starts shrinking. The more we stay in it, the
yeah.
smaller it gets. So we need to kind of keep pushing against it. Just lean into discomfort and our confidence will rise. But in answer to your question, Emma, I think people are born with different levels of it, maybe naturally in their genes. I think early years are really important, but everybody can build and shape it. I think some of that comes as well from reflecting on the things that they've done, the little wins, because we're quite
Mm,
harsh on ourselves. We critique all the stuff we didn't do well. So
mm,
getting into reflective practice each week and saying, where was the small win I had this week? However small,
mm,
that builds confidence. So stepping out of a
mm.
comfort zone, my mantra is do something a little bit scary every day.
Mm,
Something a little bit scary. That could be talking to
yeah.
the barista. It could be putting your hand up at a meeting. Yeah, that sort of
Feel fear and do it
feel the
anyway.
fear and do it anyway. That was Susan Jeffers. That's a book I've got as well. That's a great one.
Amazing, isn't it? I remember reading that in my
Did you?
20s.
Did you?
But when you were talking there about confidence, I had an amazing conversation with a guy called Brian Keane who
Right.
he does podcasting in Ireland, and he had spoken to students of mine and said to them, confidence is making little promises to yourself every
Right.
day and
Well,
following through on them. And I love
that's
that
great. Do you know, I love that.
very.
You're dead right, Emma. That is such a lovely thought because keeping us small promises, because we then think we haven't let ourselves down. So if we said to ourselves, I'll go out for a walk, even if we said we'll go 30 minutes, even if we go for 10 minutes, imperfectly though that is, it's still progress. So I love that idea because that builds your confidence. You know you've not let yourself down. You've kept a small promise to
Yeah,
yourself. If you say I'm going to read a chapter of a book, but you only get to read a couple of pages, you know, I
exactly.
think it's that. I used to be a bit too much of a purist when it comes to habit formation. I'm now I kind of think about habits as ish, doing them ish each day, making a bit of progress
Mm,
on them, and that kind of keeps the
mm,
confidence high. But yeah, I
yeah,
like
definitely.
that. I love that. Yeah, upholding your own promises. I think that's key.
So when you were talking about confidence there and also the steps we can take, do you think the change is possible for everyone?
Yeah, I do. I have great belief in that. I think I've seen it through my own work for the last 16 years. I mean, my sort of big leap of faith was changing from banking into training and coaching in 16 years ago, and I hit a point where I've done ever since work that I love every day. I'm very blessed that I get to do what I love and see people change that don't believe they can change. I do believe change is possible. I think we go
Mm,
through the awareness, the acceptance, the action cycle of change. I think the first thing is really, if you want to start making changes, is just do a little bit of reflection. And it doesn't have to be a total life overhaul. I think sometimes we make
mm,
it too big. And there's a great practice actually called the Wheel of Life, which I do with coaches. Have you
mm,
heard of that, Emma?
yeah,
Do you use
yeah.
that? Do you use that?
I'm actually, funnily enough, I'm planning a New Year's workshop where I'm going to use that as a foundation for people to plan their 2026 goals.
I love that. Well, that sounds brilliant and great for
Yeah,
2026. New Year's
yeah,
resolutions. It's a great starting point where people just look at
yeah.
areas of their life and say, well, what's one area that's currently at a 3 that I might want to get? It might
Mm.
be relationships or finance to a 5. So that's a start. That's kind of a starting point for some of the stuff. I can't remember your original question, Emma. Sorry.
You're okay. No, I was actually more to do with the fact that, yeah, if we think anybody can
Yes.
change, and
Sorry, Emma. Yeah, absolutely. I think you can. And I think you don't have to believe you can change either. You have to just,
mm,
you might not think you can, but once you start seeing little movements, then you start building the confidence and you get that momentum. I tell you one thing that's hugely overrated is motivation because we think we need to be motivated to change. And there's a saying, we have to act first and the feeling follows. You've come across this.
mm,
And it's key, I wake up in the morning, I might not be motivated to jump out of bed and go for a walk. It's actually by doing the walk that the motivation rises. So I think
mm,
discipline is better than motivation. Consistency, doing those little things, the discipline of doing
mm,
small things, and then the
mm,
motivation comes. So people might feel I'm not motivated to change. But once they start doing something like a wheel of life or start writing things
mm,
down, that then follows. So, you
mm.
know, I don't jump out of bed every day going, yeah, isn't life wonderful? Even though in positive psych, I trust me, Emma, right? There's days where I go, oh God, but you have to do it, don't you? You jump out of bed and then the
Yeah,
feeling follows. And I've got to say, and
yeah,
get your 2 feet on the ground. But there are days when my motivation levels are woeful. And I think,
mm,
oh my God, Paul, what do I need to do? And sometimes you just let yourself off and say, I'm going to have one of those days, um,
yeah,
and let
yeah.
it be. But it is possible for everybody, and I think the wheel of life. That sounds great, Emma.
So, Paul, just to wrap up at the psychology end of things,
Yeah.
where do you see the future of positive psychology going.
Yeah, well, I think certainly it's become ever more necessary in today's world. I think probably, like everything, there'll be some sort of AI complement to it.
Yeah.
I've already seen people using and leaning into Chat GPT to help them with a few of their issues and going in. And I think that's fine. I think, I think but the one thing it misses, obviously, is the humanity aspect.
Mm.
So I think, in our professions, Emma, in teaching, in your work, breast work, and in my work of coaching, I think there'll always be a need for us to be there as that humanity piece. But I think it can be quite good for people to have some access within reason to using AI to help them in certain situations. So, we had to mention AI. It's the flavor of the month now, but I think that's partly where hopefully people can access it more easily. I think the research will continue into, the way that the brain is able to adapt very, not quickly necessarily, but can adapt to practices over time to help us to change, to become more positive, to make it more of a default, because this is the thing that the studies show. The more we practice the gratitude, the less we compare ourselves, the more we reflect, the more we get out in nature, as you said. These are all practices that start to change the synapses and the neurons in the brain so that it becomes more of a natural path for us,
Yeah.
when we actually face problems. So it becomes our sort of more of our default. And I think that's something that with practice, people will be able to develop more and more. As for the future, more research, I see it as very positive. I think people will be able to access it. And I think it become more and more necessary. We live in a world of 24-hour newsreels. If we're not careful, as you said earlier, all of that can be overwhelming. So it's
Yeah.
definitely something that I think people will lean into more and more, hopefully.
Another huge change as well that has happened in our society is religion. I mean, for
Yeah,
many years, obviously, Ireland has a very checkered past with it.
yeah,
But when we think about what religion brings to a society, it brings community, it
yeah,
brings togetherness.
yeah,
And when we've lost that piece. So I think that's why many people hopefully are finding their way to spirituality, to finding that contentment in things outside of materialistic
yeah.
goals.
I think you're absolutely right. And I was really encouraged. And obviously, what you're alluding to here is something that I only learned about recently, was that the younger generations are turning back to spirituality, in whatever form that is for them. And I think that's great. I hear as well that there's less sharing on social media. People are fed up with sharing, and I think that's great for the generations coming through. Connectedness, we need that. I think in terms of positive psychology, two things that are really good for our mental health: purposefulness, having some sort of purpose, doesn't have to be huge scale, but something that gets us out of bed, and social interaction. And I do see the epidemic of loneliness, on the phones. That's not real connection. So I think it's great to see a movement coming about. I was only reading about this in the last few weeks of people gathering again, connecting, putting their phones away. So I'm really encouraged by that. I
Mm.
think that's definitely a way forward, Emma, as you say, and
Yeah.
sort of stuff you do, because you bring communities together.
Mm.
It's all in person, isn't it? Is your work all
Yeah,
in person, Emma?
definitely. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
huge about being in front of people and,
yeah,
the physical presence of somebody. I mean, we can all be actors and actresses online, but the reality of a person when you meet them, you
yeah.
can't top that, can you,
No,
Paul?
you can't. Absolutely not. That's when you see the whites of their eyes and the real soul of somebody.
Yeah,
It's when it comes to me. Absolutely right, Emma. So I
yeah.
think in terms of the future, there's some hope there, definitely, which is great.
I love that. Thank you so, so much. I mean, I have a final round now, Paul. Brace
Go for
yourself,
it.
okay? This is called Soul Sparks. Very
Soul
cheesy, but you
Sparks. I
know
love
what?
that.
It's a
Go
quick
for it.
fire round, but it's
Yeah.
not too quick. I mean, you can take your time with the answers, but I've
Go
got
for it,
about
Emma.
5 questions to ask you here to get to know you a little
Go
bit
for it.
more.
Thank you.
So, the first question, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready for this, Emma. First Soul Spark.
Yeah. So, a book that genuinely changed how you see the world.
Okay. I think one of the ones was a book called The Four Agreements. I don't know
Oh,
if you come across
yeah.
it, Emma. And I'm
Mm,
actually going to turn a page to make sure I remember the four, because I have it
love
written
it.
down. But it's the
Mm,
four agreements, and it's basically, it, I believe it's ancient wisdom anyway, and it talks about some of the things that resonated with me was being true to your words. So kind of when you say something, do it, fulfilling it, not making assumptions. It's some truths that are very much bound up with societies throughout generations, and particularly from a well-being perspective, if we keep certain truths, if we play to certain rules, and I use the word rules loosely, then we feel better about ourselves. I was trying desperately to find the four agreements. You think I'd have learned them. I
Don't worry,
mean,
I
it's,
believe you have read it. It's okay,
well, I tell
Paul.
you, here, Emma, here we go. I knew I had it somewhere. You believe me, don't you?
I do
Be
believe you.
impeccable, be impeccable with, don't take things personally. That's another one. Don't make assumptions and always try your best. So there you go. It was
Great
Don
book.
Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah,
Phew,
great book.
I found him.
Um, a place you haven't been to yet, but you feel drawn to.
Okay. I mean, it's funny, parts of Ireland, actually.
Yeah.
I am very much drawn to nature. I love nature. Recently, Kira and I managed to head up to Balik Castle and the surrounding area,
Mm,
and it was beautiful to get back there. So I think some of the islands around Ireland I would like to visit.
mm,
I'd love to do some sort of retreat
mm.
where, Kira gets rid of me for a week or maybe a month, however long she, and I go, and I just really feel that that's a calling for me. So when I go to visit somewhere, we've been fortunate to travel quite a lot for holidays. We love the States, we love Europe. We haven't been to Dubai, that's on the list, but we've
Yeah.
been to sort of Thailand. But it's funny when you ask that question now, it's somewhere I'd like to go to is somewhere where I can just completely disconnect for a week. And I have a feeling that's going to be somewhere in Ireland. I'll find an island somewhere, or rent out a lighthouse, sit at the top of that, or whatever. But it's just somewhere like that. I love Ireland, Emma. It's
Yeah.
my it's my spiritual home. I wasn't born here, as you know, but I feel there's parts of it that I really want to reconnect to, because with the business of work, I've lived here 25 years. There's parts that I've not seen. So big it up
Yeah.
for Ireland, I say,
Something kind of magical about parts of Ireland for sure.
without a
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah. So, what's one risk you wish you'd had taken when you had the chance?
Mm. Okay. I mean, yeah. Every time that something good has happened, it's been because of a risk. I suppose probably getting out of a career earlier than I did. So I eventually extricated myself from the banking and consulting world. Well, not the bank, the consulting world, the banking world, and moved into learning and development. But I had that nagging thought for probably 4 or 5 years. So my learning from that is listen, and I'd say to people, listen to this, listen to that little voice that's saying it's time for change. I resisted that, to go back to resistance. My one regret is maybe not doing it earlier, but there's a great saying: the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is today. So
Mm,
I don't have too many regrets on risk, because I think I've taken a few big ones, but maybe a bit earlier with regards to the career.
yeah.
So listen to that little voice, I think, Emma.
Thank you. And finally, what's one simple thing that brings you joy in your
Mm.
life?
Connection with people. I mean,
Mm,
definitely every time that I connect, and like with yourself tonight, Emma,
mm,
it really warms my heart, and meeting new people as well. I love that. I'm a people person, but I think we all need that social aspect. So
mm,
whenever I'm feeling a bit low, whenever I'm feeling not on form, connecting, whether it be online like this,
mm.
hopefully in person's even better, but just making that connection, that always lifts me. That's my go-to. That's my go-to, Emma, and really
Yeah.
lifts up. And indeed, it's lifted me tonight, meeting you and having this chat. It really has been great from that point of view of lifting my spirits before the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And Paul, when if people want to work with you, I mean,
Yeah,
first I didn't really ask you clearly, when people do want to work with you, what do they usually come to you for? And
yeah,
also, what do you offer to people if they want to work with you?
yeah. No, thank you, Emma. And thanks for giving the
Mm,
opportunity, because
yeah.
most of my work actually is workshops that I deliver around the
Mhm,
country for. Now, I work with some of the corporates around Ireland and the UK, also in education. I'm delighted to be connected to a few of the support services around education. So they're my sort of spheres. So anybody that wants to look at a leadership, I do leadership programs. a lot of my work is around something called insights discovery, which is a lovely personality piece where you all get a profile. So it's good for teams. So I work with teams and we see which color you are, what impact that has on you as a team. So I get teams together for 1 day workshops around something called insights discovery. And then my one-to-one coaching, I mean, it's funny. I know I sort of put myself out there as a positive psychology coach. I tend to do that more in groups than one-to-one these days. So I'm going to try and clear the diary a bit more for more of that one-to-one stuff and come back to that. But people can reach out through I've got a website. There's not many Paul Dickers out there. You'll find me in LinkedIn, Instagram, of course, trying desperately to build the following on Instagram. They can reach out and I'll be delighted to start a conversation. So, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share that, Emma, because it's great to be able to offer the services and as I say, meet new people to work with.
Yeah. Well, Paul, I have just absolutely enjoyed every moment of this conversation.
Me
I mean,
too.
you're such a inspiring man, but I think your advice and your attitude and all of your tips are something we all need in our lives, you know? And
Thank
I'm
you.
just really grateful that I got to connect with you today.
Well, thank you, Emma. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. This has been so lovely. And even
Yeah.
preparing for it has been a really nice point in my year because it's been a busy year. And you inviting me on gave me a chance to just think a little bit about where I've been and what I want to get to next. So without that, we don't have that sort of space very often. So thank you for affording me that. And well done on your fabulous podcast. I've been watching it and it's superb. So I wish you all the best into 2026 with it, Emma.
You're so kind. Thank you so much. I'm genuinely just really touched by your presence. So to anyone listening, if you found something in here that helped you or made you feel a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more connected with yourself, maybe you can get in touch with myself or Paul and share your thoughts on our conversation. I'm sure we both would love to hear from you. So thanks again, Paul, for your time.
Thank you, Emma.